Welcome to Women Positively Aging, the podcast for women in midlife who want to live well for longer. I'm your host, Barbara Bray. I'm a PhD researcher in healthy ageing diets at Queen's University Belfast in Northern Ireland, part of the UK. I'm passionate about living well for longer. It's woven into my research. And the reason I set up this podcast was to help people who are in midlife realise that there are things that we can do to improve the quality of our health as we age. Some of it is to do with genetics, some of it's to do with the environment, but there's some good news there about our lifestyle choices and behaviours, things that we can do just to inch closer to having a healthier lifestyle once you take away some of the wider environmental and genetic factors. Season 2 of this podcast builds on Season 1, where we'll be looking at specific areas such as bone health and weight management, things that have been bothering women and probably didn't want to talk about them or didn't know the right source of information to look for. I invite experts, but also people with lived experience to share their experiences and tell their stories so that you can learn from them as well. I do look forward to getting new listeners to the podcast and engaging with you either on social media or sending me messages on my website. And please do subscribe to the podcast so you get to find out when new episodes are released. Thank you very much and enjoy the podcast. Sleep is crucial for our overall health and well-being, affecting both our physical and mental health. This is why a lack of it impairs a range of functions from task performance and post-physical activity recovery to cognitive performance and mood. Poor sleep quality also impairs decision-making. What can we do to manage episodes of poor sleep? Is it just sleep that's an issue? And where does tiredness come into it? What impact can menopause have on our sleep? In today's episode, How to Sleep Better, I'll be asking these questions to Dr Jonny Bloomfield, health and performance coach, and I'll also be speaking with Diana Spellman, a company director who will be sharing her story of sleep problems as she adapted to the menopause. Welcome, Jonny and Diana.
Hello, Barbara. How are you?
I'm good. I've slept well. How about you?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad.
Hi, Barbara. Nice to see you.
It's great to have you both here. And I'm going to start with Jonny. So, Jonny, sleep and tiredness. Perhaps you can define that for us, please.
Sure thing. There is a clear difference between sleep and tiredness. Tiredness is something that we accumulate in our wakeful hours, and sleep is something that we relieve through our nighttime hours when we're asleep. So quite simply, but quite often they're kind of confused a little bit, or people will relate to tiredness and sleep being the same thing, but they're not entirely the same thing. We build up our tiredness to allow us to sleep, and we obviously sleep to relieve our sleepiness.
Well, that's given us a starting point. That's great. So in terms of you, Diana, have you got any comments on sleep and tiredness and how you think you're impacted by sleep and or tiredness?
Yeah, I really relate to the sort of concept of being wired but not tired, and that was a real problem for me. I think particularly where there's a lot of activity in the business, and there's multiple ideas and projects going on. Inevitably, there's challenges that you need to work through, and I am a little bit hyperactive and I do push myself quite hard. So actually not taking time during the day to just take a break was a big learning curve for me. And I think at the peak of my worst sleeping habits, I was possibly losing, or felt like I was losing, about a night a week, which really put me into a really bad cycle of then being overtired and having to sleep, probably oversleep, and then a seesaw effect, which wasn't helpful.
That's interesting.
Yes, and of course tiredness comes from many different sources. It's not just sleep that or the quality of our sleep, but the volume of our sleep that actually determines how tired we might feel. So it's a lot to do with what we eat, what we drink, how much we move, how much exposure we get to daylight, how we manage our stress, how much stress we have to deal with. If we're bored, if I just told you to sit at home all day and do nothing, you would feel tired at the end of that day. So boredom can bring tiredness, or any sort of fluctuations or changes to our general routine can throw us a little bit out. Like if we don't get our regular coffee or caffeine hit at some point, we might have a little bit of withdrawal from that, and that can leave us feeling a little bit run down at times. And of course, we have a natural biorhythm, so time of day will dictate our tiredness levels. We will naturally wake up feeling a little bit tired. We'll take time to kind of come out of that sleep inertia and into a level of alertness. So around about mid-morning, we're pretty much all systems go, and then we'll have a dip after lunch, just simply natural biological dip, and that can obviously be exacerbated by the stress and what we maybe have for lunch as well. So we can feel more tired at that point. And sometimes, if we're sleep deprived, we'll have symptoms of sleepiness at that point. You'll have yawning, you'll feel, you've got your heavy eyes, and your head nods, and you'll feel like you're craving for a bit of a nice nap, and that was obviously tiredness has brought about sleepiness. But in the afternoon, we'll have another peak of alertness with natural rise up to about dinner time, and then a steep decline towards our natural bedtime as well. So the tiredness will accumulate on us and make us feeling sleepy for that evening's sleep.
Interesting. So you're going to talk to us about how we can sleep through the night. Have you got some kind of key things that we're going to be hearing as we go through the session, Jonny?
Yeah, 100%. So how we sleep basically is, I've almost alluded to two of the three. In fact, I think I've alluded to all three systems that are in place. Mm-hmm. So the first one is our sleep drive.
Yes.
So that is basically we start to accumulate sleepiness from the moment that we wake up. So as we go about our day, we expend energy and a chemical called adenosine that builds up inside our brains, and it just steadily accumulates throughout the day. Now, depending how maybe physically tiring our day is, or mentally tiring, or a combination of those two, may determine just the how much adenosine gets built up and how much of a sleep drive that we will have whenever it comes to the end of the day. And ideally, your sleep drive we should go to bed when we're at a peak of our sleep drive, and you'll feel those symptoms that I mentioned earlier about yawning and head nodding and just that general feeling of needing to sleep. That is the cue for actually entering your bed and going, putting your head down and going to sleep. So system one is sleep drive. Some people call it sleep pressure. A really good way of thinking about this is, as you go about your day, almost imagine you've got a balloon that you're filling with everything that you do all day long, and you want that balloon to be as big and as huge as possible by the time your head hits the pillow. So your sleep drive is as big as possible. So that was going to, number one, get you over to sleep, and number two, get you through the night. Don't go to bed with a squishy balloon. So if your sleep drive is not high enough, that more is going to be more likely that you're going to delay your sleep onset and also have more awakenings throughout the night. Now, once your sleep drive, once you hit the head hits the pillow and you're off to sleep, imagine the air escaping out of that balloon. It's like a raspberry. It will vanish fairly rapidly. So that is that's accounting for the first half of our night, which is where we will get most of our deep sleep, our physical and physiological repair and restoration and replenishment. It's where our cardiovascular system will reset, where our metabolic system will replenish, our immune system will regulate, our blood pressure will regulate as well. So all the physical things that are very important to our health and to our maintenance happen in that first half of the night, and getting that balloon as big as you possibly can to get when getting into bed, the sleep drive as powerful as possible. That's what's going to help to kind of maximize and optimize all those functions. Then at the halfway point, the sleep drive system hands it over to a second system. That's our circadian system, whereby we have this 24-hour biorhythm, body clock, and it kind of passes from the slow wave sleep, passes over to the to much more of the memory sleep, where we'll have more rapid eye movement sleep, and we will have kind of that memory consolidation, emotional regulation component, where the brain is doing a lot of its processing, storing memories that are important, making sense of things that have happened in our past or in our present, and that's going to carry you through to your wake point. Now, we have lots of hormones, which I'm sure we're going to talk about today, that run smoothly that run very smoothly and carefully on this circadian rhythm. Two hormones that are very important for sleep one is melatonin, which happens at the beginning of our evening. So as our sleep drive builds, our body will detect darkness and will start to release our melatonin, which will help with that sleep onset. And that will kind of carry us through to about 4 o'clock in the morning, whenever it kind of gets passed over to our awakening hormone, which is cortisol. So cortisol then will peak around about 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning for most of us, and that's what wakes us up, naturally wakes us up. And some people, if they time it right, will be able to wake up and get up fairly comfortably. If you mistime it, you'll want to hit the snooze button, or you'll want to sort of get further sleep from that point if you just still feel incredibly deep and drowsy. But so the kind of the timing of your sleep is very important, and we'll talk a wee bit about that later on. And the third system that I did mention was stress. So it's how much stress you encounter through the day and how much recovery you can replenish from that. So through the night, we want to get plenty of recovery during our sleeping time, so that we can regulate and rebalance from the volumes of stress that we've encountered through the day. But it's really advisable to gather moments of recovery throughout the day, so that we don't go to bed completely overstimulated and overloaded, and our bodies kind of still coping with the volumes of stress that we encounter. So it's all about, listeners maybe be aware, it's all about balance. It's all about making sure we've got a good amount of stress in our days to kind of help us be productive, and enough recovery to replenish ourselves from that as well. So recovery prior to bedtime, that wind down time that we'll certainly talk about, and we want to see deep recovery throughout the night, so the sleep quality is very, very high.
Yeah, thanks for that, Johnny. I think that point about balance that made me laugh. I think balance is the thing that we're all trying to find in life, and it just seems to be almost elusive in a way, but we will get there. I think for our generation, when you're in your 40s and 50s, you just feel squeezed from all sides. So balance is a fairly difficult concept to even imagine, but we'll talk about that a bit more later. But I'm interested in picking up what you said about hormones, not just sleep hormones, but really a reference to the fact that most of the listeners in this show are generally in their menopausal years. So I think a lot of people are going to be interested to know about our changing hormones and how they affect the quality of our sleep, please.
Okay, so particularly throughout menopause, the hormones will fluctuate. It's a big part of the process, but I think it's reductionism to say that hormones are to blame for challenges in your sleep throughout this phase. So quite a significant number of ladies will have noticed at least some sort of change in their sleep as they move through this transition period of their lives. So somewhere between 40 and 60% of women will report having some sort of sleep disturbance as a result of this process. But there's hormones such as estrogen and progesterone that are closely linked with other bodily functions that can also disrupt our sleep on many different levels. And we've got like ovarian hormones like estrogen. They bind to receptors in the brain that are directly influencing sleep factors like our circadian rhythm. They kind of start to shift it ever so slightly. And then they can also indirectly have impacts on our sleep by changing the regulation of our body temperature and also our mood, how we actually feel. We mentioned there about that stress system. So if you're feeling anxious or stressed about what type of sleep you may be having, that might be setting up for less quality sleep in itself. But there is links there, as estrogen levels fall during perimenopause, so lots more women may experience more nighttime awakenings. They would experience poorer sleep quality and more trouble sleeping. That's quite commonly known. And there's been studies in both humans and animals that show that less wakefulness and reduced deep sleep would occur whenever we get less progesterone. And higher progesterone levels are also linked with more time spent awake at night. And it's clear that there is some sort of relationship there with changing hormones and sleep quality and sleep disturbances.
Well, thank you for that explanation. I'll bring Diana in now just to see if any of that resonates with you. So as you were going through the menopause, what really changed with your sleep, Diana?
Well, yes, so there were a lot of changes that I needed to make. And I think actually it's fascinating hearing Jonny just describe, there's many coinciding symptoms and cycles going on there with all those different hormones. And I suspect that, for any one of us going through menopause, whether it's pre or peri or menopause or post, actually the worst thing is trying to pin it down to, what are the factors. And it's great to hear that research from Jonny, because actually, I've struggled to find that information myself. So I've just had to figure out my own mechanisms of trying to manage my sleep better. So yeah, just going back to what Jonny was saying about making sure that you actually I get some rest time during the day, and also winding down from the stresses and the demands of running a business meant that I was, shifting my workload so that I had proper rest time in the evening to sort of read or browse or use light entertainment or be around people in a non sort of working environment. I think what I noticed was when I was younger, I could kind of work till bedtime. I'd be my sleep drive would be very high, and then hit the pillow and go to sleep straight away. And I'd ping, wake, refresh. That was great. But when I through menopause, that method just didn't work at all, because I just wonder if because of the changes of the estrogen and the progesterone and perhaps my adrenal cortisol was out of whack as well. And, it was a whole glory mix, I think, bit of a disaster. So, I was finding that I was having, at the peak of my transition, I was having huge temperature changes, very cold to start with, then very hot, and having to either get up or have a drink or go to the loo or sometimes I would have 2 cold water bottles on the go. One was in the freezer and one was defrosting just to try and keep me cool. And I know, some of my girlfriends who, had to change their whole bedding during that period because of night sweats. It was so bad. But actually, to be honest, there were other girlfriends who were absolutely fine. They weren't, they were coasting through and carrying on drinking wine and having caffeine late at night and sailing on, and it didn't seem to affect them at all. And I suspect they thought, what's all the fuss about for us who were experiencing problems. And also they were, probably thinking that we were over dramatizing it because it's actually unrelatable if you're not going through it yourself. So, yeah, lots of adjustments.
Yeah, lots of adjustments. Well, thank you for sharing that. I think it's good to hear that from your experience, because you set the scene nicely for us and explained how sleep can be disrupted, particularly in your case. And I'll come back to Jonny now and talk about the strategies that we can put in place. We talked about what we need to do regarding sleep, or how sleep is supposed to happen. But when we have got disrupted sleep, what are some of the things that we can change, Jonny, to help us sleep better?
Okay, so some of the really simple stuff, the obvious stuff to begin with, is just like have a bit of a review on your sleep environment and your sleep routines and your behaviors, or some people call that sleep hygiene. So really, looking at your bedroom for starters. Is it cool, comfortable, calming? Really, the bedroom should be only reserved for two activities. So we'll say sleep is one of them, and really nothing else. Particularly in the pandemic, I discovered there's quite a few people who started working from home, and then it transpired that they were actually using their bedroom as their office. So they were almost spending all day and all night in the same room. And this was actually leading to symptoms of insomnia, because you're kind of conditioning the brain to be awake in that room. And particularly if you're doing any work, you're not only just you're awake, you're engaged. And that means that's kind of a disastrous scenario for getting proper sleep and good quality sleep. So many people sort of developed or encountered insomnia symptoms as a result of choosing that. So the advice was like swap, go and work in your kid's bedroom instead of your own, or work in another part of the house which is away from your bedroom, which feels like an office space, a dedicated workspace that you can leave. So in terms of that sleep environment, also you're thinking about your mattress, you're thinking about your pillow set, you're thinking about your bedding and your duvet, so on. So Diana was very open there with regards night sweats and hot flashes and cold flashes. So there is this temperature fluctuation that is experienced throughout this phase in women, and sort of setting up the environment, knowing that if you're one of the 40 to 60% of women who suffer these, it's kind of accepting that and then preparing the environment to best suit the inevitable. So making sure that you've got the right mattress, and that might, a lot of people will choose memory foam, but memory foam can be very it can not easily dispel heat away from the body. If you think of the purpose, the purpose of memory foam is to sort of form a boundary around your body. It doesn't necessarily let heat to escape. So pocket springs might be a better solution. But then they've got these hybrid solutions now. So mattresses are suitable for all different types. So I mean, maybe sleeping on the right mattress, sleeping in the right posture. So whether you're a back sleeper, side sleeper, that might also have an impact because of surface area and the contact with the mattress. Then you've got making sure that your pillows are comfortable, firm, or not necessarily firm, but firm enough to be supportive. That's the word I was trying to find, to be supportive and also and comforting. and then the thickness of your duvet, depending what stage of the calendar it is, whether it's winter or summer or whatever. You kind of have to adjust the with the materials so that it's more conducive to the conditions that we're sleeping in. And then, of course, if you have ventilation capacity, so you can sleep with the window open if you're not in an area where there's going to be exposure to any sort of artificial light, or if you're comfortable with sleeping with a window open and a door open, so there's a through flow. If you're not sensitive to noise, maybe having a fan on so you can generate a little bit of airflow around the room. That's obviously another good way to keep the room cool. Sleeping by yourself, sleeping with a partner, that can also impact the heat of the room, heat of the bedding. And if you're sleeping very close together, that's you're sharing body heat. That's another thing to consider with the sort of thermoregulation from within.
I can ask you about that. So what do you advise your clients then to say, right, okay, camp out in different rooms? And then do people take to that advice or?
Yeah, like quite possibly. I think I've heard the terminology "sleep divorce" to save yourself a real divorce.
Right. Okay.
It can happen.
I'm going to get Diana to comment on that.
It can happen as easily with noise as well as temperature. So if you've got a partner who's making a lot of noise through snoring, obviously, then it might be safer for your marriage to actually to sleep in separate rooms. Now you can still have your closeness and your intimacy prior to bedtime, or that kind of the onset, but one of you then slips away to your own, and then of course in the morning one of you can slip back in together. So it doesn't have to be completely. You go two separate directions. And then there's the Swedish model where they have two single beds in the same room, which is another way to kind of co-sleep without having to, particularly if two people are totally different sizes, and one needs this type of mattress, a pocket spring mattress, and this one needs a memory foam mattress, or this one makes a lot of noise, or this one likes the room a certain way. Sometimes I've heard that in 30% of divorce cases, sleep is one of the major reasons why couples separate. Unfortunately, makes sense though. People can't sleep together. It's a bit of a difficult one to for a relationship perspective. But yeah, that's. I think I've talked a bit about sleep environment there. Sleep hygiene is really just your behavior and not your attitude and to sleep. Now, a lot of people who don't sleep well have fantastic attitudes towards it. They do everything right. Mostly everything they think they know that they do right. So they'll take, they'll have blackout blinds, and they'll have the right behaviors leading into bed, and they'll not stay on their phone, and they'll not drink too much caffeine during the day, and they'll not take any alcohol in the evening.
And can I just come in there? So have you got a set list of don'ts, things that you will definitely be a problem? So what shouldn't we be doing?
Well, okay. There is quite a few. So alcohol is certainly one. So alcohol kind of acts like a sedative. It helps people will use it a lot to get to sleep. But unfortunately, if it's a slow metabolizer. It takes about an hour to process 1 unit of alcohol. So if your strategy is, I'm going to work my way through a bottle of wine to help me sleep tonight, then unfortunately your stress system is going to be busy because it's got a lot of toxin to kind of process while you're asleep. The depth of your sleep isn't going to be nearly as what it should be because of the sedative type approach to what alcohol does to your sleep. And then you'll have a REM rebound whereby you'll have a lot of vivid dreaming and so on will happen as a result. So the quality of your sleep will never be good if your strategy is to kind of drink your way to sleep. Even think about it, if you wake up with after having maybe 5 or 6 units in an evening, and you wake up the next morning, you still feel groggy and tired and lethargic the whole next day. So that doesn't really work. Another one doesn't work is too much caffeine during the day. So we get into this, I need caffeine to kind of pull me out of this fatigue in the morning or this tiredness feeling. So you kind of start chasing the day with too much caffeine. Now, caffeine earlier on, I was talking about a chemical called adenosine. Adenosine binds to adenosine receptors in the brain. Well, caffeine comes in and robs the. It's almost like a car park full of blue cars. That's so. Caffeine will just take all the car parking spaces up, and the red cars, which is the adenosine, they just have to wait in the queue for the caffeine to kind of wear out and let go, and then you get this surge, this tidal wave of adenosine looking to grab onto the receptors, and you'll feel incredibly tired and sleepy, and that's probably where you then grab more caffeine to overcome it. So it's a terrible vicious cycle in terms of caffeine, but it will. Drinking too much caffeine will end up with a squashy balloon, poor sleep drive, going to bed. So we want to kind of limit the caffeine to maybe 2 to 3 cups of coffee of regular size. And I always recommend like having no caffeine after 12 to allow the body to kind of work through. And then we'll have different sensitivities to caffeine. So some of us will be able to do that. Some of us won't. So I recommend kind of the benefits of coffee, decaf coffee particularly, but be careful about use your caffeinated drinks very strategically.
And can I ask Diana, so you mentioned, I think caffeine and alcohol, was there anything else that you stopped doing as you were trying to make your sleep improvements, Diana?
Yes, just to get into a new mindset, I think. And I think some of it was just about building up a routine and a confidence and reducing that anxiety. But also I would bring my meal times forward. So I'd attempt so that I wasn't having a heavy meal or a meal at all or anything to eat at all after 7 o'clock in the evening if my target bedtime or if my target sleep time was around 10ish. So, that gave me 3 clear hours, but that was a sort of menopausal, post-menopausal strategy. I think when I was younger and active, that I wasn't really aware of that. I think it's just been more of an aging gracefully phenomenon to help me in my sleep strategy. Yeah.
And was there anything else that you added? So we talked about the things that you stopped doing, but was there anything else that you added? So you talked about mindset, but what about other initiatives that you tried?
I would, have little strategies that if I wasn't going to sleep as well as smoothly as I anticipated, I would have a glass of water or sip on chamomile tea or another infusion of some sort, or just have some smelling aromatherapy oils like lavender or any of those oils that you enjoy. Rose oil is, I think it just depends on the individual, but those were the 2 that worked for me.
Well, thanks for sharing that. So, Jonny, we've heard about what Diana's tried. Is there anything else that you think we should or shouldn't do?
Those strategies were great. Diana was mentioning there about ways that helped her relax and unwind. She's obviously running a company, busy, stressful job, but it's important to come down from that. So a wind down time is critical to protect. So if you have a target bedtime there of 10, you should really be having a target, a dedicated wind down time, 60, ideally 90 minutes prior to that, whereby your day's done. You have to now start to commit to your recovery strategies to wind down. So totally agree with that. And wind down strategy can be anything at all. Some of the stuff there was whether it's to do with smelling or listening or reading or tasting, just those kind of comforting feelings that you want to be inviting to wind you down towards your sleepiness, and letting your sleep drive start to come and take over. The other things that I would potentially recommend people to do is there's a little bit of evidence around helping to regulate your temperature in bed is by wearing socks in bed. So you create, by wearing, either woolly socks or cotton socks, you can create this, create something called vasodilation, which helps to dispel heat a lot. So, and you could go another step and actually wear socks and gloves. So if you're really suffering from overheating, try that strategy to wear socks and or gloves and see if it helps you in any way. So my advice here would be to kind of make sure that you identify like a cutoff point, 60 to 90 minutes prior to your bedtime, where you dedicate a proper wind down. That means disengaging from your phone, disengaging maybe from the TV. Part of my routine is to always do 10 minutes of gentle stretching yoga. It's great for the body. It's also great for just the mind. Start practicing your things like meditation or anything that kind of helps you to recover from the stresses from that day. And don't see it as a waste of time. Don't see it as this is, I could be doing something better. See this as really purposeful to let you kind of wash off the day. Washing off is another good one. Is bath time is like a good way to thermoregulate is by warming the body up and have a warm bath, and then let the natural air temperature start to invite that cooling process happening. So a little bit of that can be happening. Plus, you'll feel very clean getting into bed, and that's a nice thing. Other strategy, if you are having night sweats, having something like an extra set of pajamas right beside the bed, so you might need to change clothes. So make it really easier for yourself just to kind of change what you're wearing, feel more comfortable, and getting back to sleep if you're woken up by that. If you're feeling thirsty, so Dana was saying there, you sort of drink a little bit extra water sometimes through this period. So you might want to put a nightlight on the way to the kitchen, so make that journey nice and comforting for you, and obviously on the way back. But you might want to. I've had one client before left themselves a little note in the fridge and just said, don't worry, it's going to be okay. You can get, you can sleep well. I'll see you in the morning. It was a note to yourself. Or if you have a lovely
note to your 4 a.m. self, I like it.
Or if you have a lovely partner, maybe suggest that they'll do that one for you. It's another little good thing. It just helps you feel comforted.
Yeah,
and that's the feeling you really want to have, to know that you're not alone. You're not being someone's caring for you, or you're caring for yourself through this stage of life, and it can really help you give a sense of control. So show yourselves a bit of self-compassion, a bit of empathy to your situation. That gives you back a lot of power, and you kind of approach this phase of life with more grace and strength.
Well, thank you so much for that. So what I'll do now is we've been given a lot of information, Jonny, and Diana's shared some of her experiences as well. But if you can just kind of summarise the take-home messages. So what do you want people to remember when they finish listening to this podcast about sleep strategy and how to sleep better?
Okay, so I'm going to give five take-homes that I suggest everyone follows. So first of all, most important one is number one is getting up at the same time every day, 7 days a week. So this is critical for not only to build your sleep drive, but also to maintain your circadian rhythm and all your hormones to kind of flow. The more we mess around with our uptime, the more we mess around. Only go to bed when you're absolutely sleepy. Reserve the bedroom for only sleep and sex. If you feel that you can't continue, if you wake up in the night and can't continue sleeping, stop trying to sleep. It's never going to happen. So just avoid that anxiety that you build up. And then avoid daytime napping unless it's for safety reasons is my fifth one. So you're making sure that you're allowing your sleep drive to be as high as possible to get you through that night later on.
That's the one that I'm going to struggle most with, but thanks for those 5 things, Jonny. I'll do my best with number 5, but I'm a serial napper. And Diana, out of those take-homes, those 5 take-homes, is there anything new that you think you can try?
Yeah, it's been fascinating, actually. So I think I will, instead of napping, I think what I'm going to try and do is just actually, instead of that nap, I'll just have a quiet time. So it'll be a restful break, perhaps with an infusion or something, not caffeine, if after midday. And yeah, I think that will be really helpful. It'll be interesting to see by switching the nap into a rest, how that will improve my sleep. I expect it'll improve my sleep quality quite well. Yeah, thank you for that. That's great.
Oh, thank you for joining me. And for the listeners, if there's anything that you want more information on, you can contact Jonny. So he has a website, www.jonnybloomfield.com, and get some tips from him on sleep. At the end of the show notes, so the show notes for this particular podcast episode, we put some links that Jonny's provided us for national sleep guidelines, some links to the NHS, and some helpful information generally on how to get a good night's sleep. So do have a look at the resources, and I hope you all will be getting better sleep thanks to this episode. It just remains for me to thank you both, Jonny and Diana, for being guests on this episode of How to Sleep Better. I do hope we all get a good night's sleep tonight. Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode of Women Positively Aging. If you like what you've heard, please do click subscribe and you'll be notified of when the next episode lands on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all the usual podcast players. Don't hesitate to contact me if you're also interested in hearing more about my healthy aging diet research. I'd love to work with businesses who are developing food products and looking at how they can improve them and target them towards people's needs as they age, but also organisations that want to help their employees who are in midlife improve the quality of their diets and inevitably how they will age and live well for longer. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to having you on again when I have the next episode. Take care and stay well.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.